Hello, Eric. First of all, thanks a lot for taking time out for this interview with Organizer. I welcome you on this session.
It's my pleasure. I'm really honored to be interviewed by such an important mouthpiece.
Thank you. Let's start the session, or I would say interview with you. The first, as you see, the current scenario in the world and global diplomacy, we can see a lot of changes, especially the world moving towards multipolar dynamics. What's your view about this current situation globally?
Overall, of course, it creates a much better and much fairer world. I mean, look, the 19th century was the century of colonialism, where some relatively small European nations like the United Kingdom and France dominated the world and were able to make a great nation like India a colony. And the 20th century was largely dominated by the United States, even if the Soviet Union was also a major player. Now we're moving into a much fairer world where, yes, the United States is still important for sure. China is important, but so is Europe, so is India, so is Turkey, Brazil, Indonesia, and a number of other nations, and it creates a much, much better world. But of course, it also creates a world where there is not one decision maker like the US tended to be. So we need to work together to find compromises, and we need to establish institutions which reflects this new world. I mean, look, how can we be in a situation where the biggest nation in the world, the most fast-growing nation in the world, India, is not even on the Security Council of the United Nations?
Yeah, absolutely. And how do you see the role of organization like BRICS in this current scenario and their role in future of balancing the power in the globe?
Look, for the last 100 years, all developing nations have been facing one dilemma, and that is how to modernize without westernize. And any nation who doesn't modernize is doomed. It cannot compete, it cannot create jobs, it cannot create prosperity, it cannot bring its people out of poverty. While at the same time, nations also want to protect their own roots and history and heritage. And the first nation which really cracked that dilemma was Japan. But of course, other nations have done the same: Korea, China, India. And now I think we see a world where China, in a way, is more confusion than it was in the past. India and the Prime Minister Modi seeking its root in the old Indian history, in the text of the Vedas, in Hinduism, but it's creating the roots of India while at the same time modernizing when it comes to technology and industries. And I think BRICS is reflecting this, because there's very little which is bringing BRICS together. They have different governing systems. They are in all continents of the world. Some BRICS nations are very rich, some are very poor. What brings them together is this aspiration of a new world where previously developed countries are playing a much bigger role. And of course, what brings them together is that they are opposed to a world which is totally dominated by the United States and the West. They want a new multipolar world.
Thanks, it's insightful. And how do you see Bharat or India's role in this current situation and in coming future?
I think Bharat is very important, or India is very important in so many ways. It provides a model for modernization and development. Look, India now have 7% economic growth. If that continues through one decade, well, it will double the economy of India. It will make on average all Indians double as rich. I mean, that applies to Mr. Adani and Ambani as well as to the poor Indians. But on average, it will create a much more powerful and much more prosperous India and a model for other nations to emulate. But of course, it also makes Indian foreign policy much more important. India can support other nations, can support global causes like, say, vaccination or fight against climate change. So India can provide a role model, but also the leadership which the world needs. And by the way, the G20 presidency of India really showcased the potential of India as a global leader.
You mentioned about G20 and the presidency of India. How do you pursue or perceive India's role in involving African Union in G20 and what impact it will, create in global South?
Yes, I think that was a very positive move, and I'm very glad that India was in the presidency when it happened and spearheaded that development, because Africa is, of course, in many ways much weaker than India or China. The population of Africa is more or less the same as the population of India, 1.4 billion plus minus. But India has one leadership in foreign policy, one strong voice, while Africa is 54 nations, 54 small markets. Is much harder to develop, and of course it's much more difficult to create a powerful voice on international affairs. So bringing Africa into G20, I think, was a great service to Africa and to the world, and we should thank India and Prime Minister Modi for doing this.
And how do you see, like, UN also acknowledged India's role during COVID, especially the initiative called Vaccine Matri, where India provided, medical, whether it's medical support, whether it's medicine or other resources to 150 countries during COVID. And that also shows India's capability in manufacturing, especially in these critical areas. And now India is also moving towards in high-tech space technology. We have launched our own Chandrayaan that landed on moon successfully. So how do you see this Indian capability and contribution to the global world from India?
One of the most disturbing developments during COVID was that the most powerful nations with the biggest ability to help the world did so little for others. United States in particular, of course, developed wonderful vaccines, but did very little to share them at an affordable cost to the world. Here, India did much, much better. India shared vaccines with many nations, and it focused on affordable, low-cost vaccines. I visited the Serum Institute in Pune, which is, I think, the biggest vaccine factory in the world, led by Mr. Poonawalla. They have now established a big new factory which will be able to produce vaccines for the entire population of the world within 3 months if a new pandemic which were to hit humanity. And the focus of the Serum Institute and of India, I think, is wonderful, because it's as how to make sufficient vaccines at scale at a low price. Some Western companies are making wonderful vaccines, but the price is very, very high, and it's not affordable for the poor people of this world. But making scalable vaccines for everyone at a low cost, that's what the world needs. And the Serum Institute is a brilliant private facility for this, but the leadership of India in this area is of enormous importance, not just to India, not just to Asia, but to Latin America, Africa, to everyone.
Yes, indeed. And then talking about the technology aspect, whether it's in space or in, building high-tech technologies like chip manufacturing, how do you see India's contribution in the multipolar world, and about the initiatives that Prime Minister Modi and Indian government have taken, like Make in India, Atmanirbhar Bharat, which means self-sufficient Bharat. So what's your take, and how do you foresee these kind of initiatives?
I think India has a huge opportunity to produce for itself in a way which is unfortunately not available for the smaller developing nations. But look, India is one market. If you make something in Tamil Nadu, you can sell it in Kashmir, or you can sell it in Sikkim. That's a longer distance than from my hometown of Oslo down to Africa. So it's a huge distance. That is one big market, 1.4 billion people, which means that when you make something for that market, the cost is normally very low, and then you can compete in the global market. Ola, which is the Uber of India, which I think most people know, they have set up a factory for electrical scooters in Tamil Nadu, just at the border to Karnataka, and they have a wonderful slogan. They say Tesla for the West, Ola for the rest. Meaning that when they can make electrical scooter, electrical batteries, and electrical cars in India, the price will be affordable for, yes, Africa, Brazil, Middle East, for everyone, so India can compete. So I think really the way forward for India is to use this power of the huge home market to create products for the world and then also be globally competitive. Over the last decades, India has been more successful in IT than it has been in some other industries. So to take the success stories from the IT also into making other products, I think will be very valuable.
Yeah, thanks. I think you know a lot about Indian demography and the people who are contributing to Indian ecosystem. And now coming towards the Indian leadership, Prime Minister Modi, how do you see his contributions in terms of global dynamics and the current situation, especially like the conflict in between Israel and Hamas? Do you see he can contribute to bring peace in the region and in the globe? And his stature in G20 and conducting how he has conducted the G20 in India. So your comments and analysis on Prime Minister Modi's leadership.
Look, Prime Minister Modi has one enormous strength, and that is his domestic popularity. Polls show that about 80% of Indians say that Prime Minister Modi is doing either very well or good. That is much, much higher than any other global leader of any significance. Western leaders tend to be like in the 20s or 30s when it comes to domestic popularity. If you're strong at home, you can also influence more abroad because you will not be completely sucked up in the domestic issues. So I think Prime Minister Modi as an individual, but India as Bharat as a nation, has a huge opportunity now to provide a way forward for compromise between Ukraine and Russia, compromise between Palestine and Israel, and also the worldview that we should show empathy for everyone. I see people who show only empathy for either Jewish or Palestinian victims. How come? If you lose your son or daughter from terrorism or from Israeli bombing, it's still such a horror for the family. So let's be able to show empathy for everyone and find a lasting solution. Of course, when it comes to Israel-Palestine, there is only one lasting solution, which is advocated by any number of UN resolutions, and that is a two-state solution, where there will be one Jewish state of Israel and a Palestinian state living side by side. And India can play a role in helping this happen, and India can also play a role as a potential peacemaker in Ukraine war. There are others also. Turkey may help, China may help, but we need a strong voice from the South, the global South, in the peacemaking.
And under the leadership of Prime Minister Modi, how do you see Bharat performing in global platforms in next 5 to 10 years? In terms of foreign policy, economy, and restructure or reforming the UN, as you mentioned when you started this session. So these are the three broader aspects.
I think we will see a much stronger and much more self-confident Bharat in the next decade. Look, if you go back, like say to the 1950s and 60s and 70s, poverty was so big in India that was that was by far the one big concern for everyone. Now there is rapid economic growth in India. Most Indians are coming out of poverty. Even the global institutions say that extreme poverty may be completely eliminated in India. And what I see is a huge number of Indians being so proud of this economic development at home and proud of the stronger Indian voice abroad. So I think we'll see a much more self-confident India on the global arena. And of course, the global institutions need to be reorganized. I mean, how can France and the United Kingdom, two nations with 60 million people, be permanent members of the Security Council why India with 1.4 billion people is not. And when India, of course, very soon will be the third biggest economy in the world, behind the United States and China, true, but much, much bigger than the European economy. The obvious solution is the European Union is representing Europe in the Security Council, and India get one of the permanent slots. But all the other global institutions need also to be reorganized. When I come into UN Environment Program as the leader there, I realized, I mean, you won't believe it, that we had many, many more staff from Finland than from India. Well, there's nothing wrong with Finland, but it's a nation of 5 million people. How can there be more Finns than Indians in a UN institution? By the way, there's no UN institution with its headquarters in India. By the way, not in China either. All headquarters are in Europe or North America. We cannot do like this in the modern world. This may have reflected the power structure in the world in 1945 and 1950, but it does not reflect the 21st century. So the UN and many other global institutions are overdue for reform, and one of the most important reforms is a much bigger role for India.
Indeed, we wanted to contribute as an Indian or Indians. I think we have more to give to organizations like UN. And I think Prime Minister Modi also showed the way. The two initiatives I would like to highlight is that International Solar Alliance and the Yoga Day. And as you are like master or guru of ESG and climate change, how do you see this initiative by Prime Minister Modi in this International Solar Alliance, its impact and future? And secondly, the Yoga Day, its acceptance globally. We can see all are participating in all over the globe, and the Prime Minister himself participate in these initiatives every year.
No, I mean, absolutely. I had the great pleasure of being at the opening meeting of the International Solar Alliance with Prime Minister Modi and President Macron of France. And this is a very important institution to promote solar power in the world. And of course, Indian solar power companies, I mean, whether they are the big players like, say, Adani or Ambani, or the medium sales like Acme or Renew, or many of them, can also invest in solar power in Africa and other parts of the world. I had a great experience a couple of months back to go to Sanchi, a historical city in Madhya Pradesh. They have some big Buddhist stupas there, but we went there to see the solar panels, and they set up solar panels and how it liberates the people, because now farmers can make much better yields because they can pump water by solar panel, no emissions, but better yields, more money for the farmers. City Sanchi is powered by solar panels, and street lighting by solar panels also made many women telling me that now I feel more confident to walk out at night because I prefer to stay at home after dark if there's no street lighting. And so the power of this to help people being liberated, having a better life, is enormous. Yoga Yoga Day was a great initiative, very timely also in the sense that, look, so many of these global days or what has been considered global heritage is dominated by the West. The Western days or Western culture heritage, I mean, still there are many more European culture heritage sites accepted by the UN than Indian. Even if from any objective way of measuring it, there should be more Indian culture heritage sites than Europeans when you look to the splendor of Indian history over the last few thousand years. So, but Yoga Day is focusing on an Indian culture heritage, but of course, which is now practiced by millions upon millions upon millions of people at all continents of the
world. Thanks for these insightful comments. And lastly, how do you see the Asian growth? You are known to know both India and China, and what do you see in future the India-China bilateral relations, and how they can contribute together as a force for global peace and global growth?
Look, first of all, the 21st century will be the Asian century. When it comes to economy, the Chinese economy will be the biggest in the world by 2050. Then you will see US and India being at the same level at the second spot, and Indonesia will be the fourth biggest economy in the world, passing Germany, Japan, and everyone else. So you see a complete shift of the global economy to the east. And of course, India has some absolute assets here, one of them being a very young, very dynamic, entrepreneurial population. I don't know how many requests I get from small businesses in India who want me to support them for green products. The relationship between China and India at the moment is, of course, very poor. There are no flights even between China and India. There are hardly any journalists from India and China, nor any Chinese in India. And I hope this relationship can be restored and become better. Chinese and Indian civilizations are probably the two most important global civilizations, but also very different. China may be the least religious place in the world. That has nothing to do with communism today. It's 2,500 years back, Confucius gave an ideology to China, which was not really religious. While, of course, India may be the most religious place on earth. I mean, the vibrancy of temples all over India today is absolutely fabulous. So the culture and traditions are different, but I see no big issue. I mean, yes, there are different views on some border issues, but look, these border areas are very, very far from the main habitations of China, not so far from India, but still not really close to anyone. There are no raw materials there. And it's mainly a matter of national pride for both nations. So why I cannot give a solution to this. I hope solutions can be found and compromises can be made, and that the tension can be calmed down, because there's so much to benefit from a better relations in economic terms, and also to really make Asia and the developing world very, very strong in global affairs.
In closing comment, I just wanted to highlight one important aspect which was in discussion now and in past also. Prime Minister Modi made sure that vaccinations to 1.4 billion people during COVID was provided free of cost, and twice or thrice. You can see how huge this campaign was. All the adult population got at least thrice the dose of these COVID vaccinations. So it was a cause for human upliftment during this time. Not only we supported our citizens, we also provided these vaccinations and medicines to 150 plus countries. So considering all these things, there was I would say, demand within in India that is it possible that Prime Minister Modi can be considered for Nobel Prize or Nobel Prize Peace? What's your reaction on such kind of discussion?
Look, I think the role of India providing vaccines to everyone cannot be underestimated. The first time I visited India, there were hundreds of thousands of polio cases in India. Then India started vaccinating people, and now for the last 10 years, no one has got polio in India. And that happened because some visionary people, one of them was Harshvardhanji, who was Minister of Health, and the Modi also is my good friend. He was told that no, it's impossible to vaccinate all Indians. It cannot happen. This nation is so big, how can we do that? Well, then he said, well, we can provide an election paper for all Indians for all elections all the time. How can we provide the paper to go and elect, and we cannot provide the vaccines to all children in the villages? And so India did it and wiped out this horrible disease from India. And during COVID, also India showed that you can create low-cost vaccines for the masses, which are high quality and works. And that's exactly what the world needs. I'm not in the position to propose someone for the Nobel Peace Prize. But definitely, I believe that the cause of providing low-cost vaccines to the people of the world, that deserves the Nobel Peace Prize, because it's much more important than many other causes who have got the prize. It's a very, very unfair world. If you can buy vaccines for your people as long as you live in the United States or in my nation, Norway, while you cannot get vaccines to eradicate horrible diseases if you live in Africa or in poor parts of Asia. That must stop.
Thanks, Erik. I think you gave a good, insightful, and a different level of perspectives about India's initiatives, and how India is contributing in different levels, and Prime Minister Modi's impact and the leadership analysis. I thanks again for you to taking time out for this interview with Organiser. And I wish you a best of luck. I think you are doing an amazing work globally, connecting people, connecting nations, connecting institutions for better world, for economic growth. And also, I see you are motivating many innovators and entrepreneurs for new solutions and idea where we can make a better world. Thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you so much, my friend, and thank you to Organiser for this, and hope to engage with you in the future.